A man driving a county road outside Chillicothe in Ross County pulled over because something was standing in the tree line, and it was not standing like an animal. That single report from the Appalachian foothills of southern Ohio is one of hundreds filed across 10 distinct creature categories over 2 centuries. Dogmen near the Scioto River, winged shapes over Pike County ridges, something reptilian in the creek beds nobody wants to name out loud. Something reptilian in the creek beds nobody wants to name out loud. Every county has its own creature, its own waterway, its own pattern of encounters that predates any modern legend. What nobody has explained is why the geography keeps producing all 10 types simultaneously. The foothills here are old in a way that feels geological, and something else, carved by the same glacial retreat that left the river valleys unusually deep and the forest cover unusually dense. Isolation does something to a landscape, and southern Ohio has been quietly isolated for a very long time. Farmers, hunters, and highway workers have all filed reports, and their descriptions don't borrow from each other. You have to ask yourself what kind of place generates that much variety, that consistently, across that many generations of completely ordinary people. Across that many generations of completely ordinary people. The answer might be the land itself, and that possibility is harder to dismiss than any single creature standing in the trees. Most witnesses don't reach for the word monster. They reach for the word man, and then they stop. Along Kinnickinnic Creek in Ross County, drivers have reported a figure crossing the road on 2 legs, broad across the shoulders, moving with a forward lean that no person walks with. The tree lines along Route 50 near Chillicothe have produced at least a dozen accounts over 3 decades, and the details repeat in ways that are hard to dismiss. Witnesses describe something between 6 and 8 feet tall, covered in dark hair, with arms that hang lower than they should. Pike County adds a different texture. Sightings near Sunfish Creek describe a creature that doesn't flee when spotted, it just watches. That stillness is what unsettles people more than the size. Scioto County reports push the description further, with some witnesses insisting the face was too flat, too wide, too arranged to belong to any ape they'd seen in a photograph. So what are you left with when the creature is too deliberate for an animal and too wrong for a man? Something with a dog's face and a man's posture has been walking the Scioto River corridor for longer than most locals care to admit. These aren't wolf sightings misremembered by frightened hikers. Witnesses consistently describe a creature that holds eye contact, that stands upright, and that does not run when it's spotted. That behavioral detail is what separates these reports from every large canine encounter on record in Ohio. A wolf breaks and flees. This thing turns and watches you, and the witnesses who describe that moment all use the same word: deliberate. Ross and Scioto counties have logged the densest cluster of these reports, almost always within a half-mile of the river itself, as if the water is the boundary it patrols. You've probably heard of Bigfoot, but have you ever considered what it means that a completely different kind of non-human intelligence might be working the same stretch of ground? The Scioto corridor already gave us upright ape-like figures in the tree line, and now it's giving us something canine, something territorial, something that seems to know the river as well as any predator knows its range. What that river is hiding beneath the surface is a question the dogmen reports don't answer. They only make it harder to ignore. The same river corridor that dogmen patrol at night holds something older underneath the surface. Witnesses along the Scioto and Paint Creek describe a creature they won't name directly. They call it the thing in the water. It moves against the current, low and flat, with a body too long for any native reptile on record. Scales have been reported, a ridge along the spine, and eyes that catch light from below the waterline. One Pike County man described watching it hold still for nearly 4 minutes before it simply vanished into the silt. Ross County creek beds have turned up track impressions that no herpetologist has been willing to formally classify. The shape of those tracks, 3-toed, wide-spaced, pressed deep, suggests something that carries real weight on land as well as water. Scioto County locals have passed down accounts of a serpentine form stretching longer than a john boat, moving at dusk near low-water crossings. Whatever lives in these waterways doesn't stay in them, and the ridges directly above those same rivers have their own witnesses watching the sky. Something has been crossing the ridgelines of Pike County at dusk, and witnesses can't agree on what it is. The wingspans they describe run wider than any known bird native to southern Ohio, sometimes stretching past 10 feet across. One account from the Scioto River corridor puts a dark, leather-winged shape circling a ridge for nearly 4 minutes before it folded and dropped below the tree line. Locals have called it a thunderbird, borrowing a name older than the county itself, but the descriptions don't always match a single consistent creature. Some reports add a neck too long for any raptor, a silhouette that reads wrong even at distance. Then there are the things that don't quite land in the physical world at all. Shadow figures seen at the edge of headlights on hollow roads, shapes that move without disturbing the air around them. Witnesses describe a presence more than a body, something perceived rather than seen. The sky above these ridges and the dark at the road's edge may be as crowded as the riverbanks and the tree line below them, and that possibility is what makes the next category of creature feel genuinely different. Not every creature in these hollows wants to terrify you. Some of them seem to want something stranger than that. Witnesses in Ross and Pike counties have described small, hunched figures darting between tree lines, barely waist-high, with limbs that move wrong for anything living here. Locals in the Paint Creek drainage have called them goblins for generations, which is a word that sounds like folklore until you hear two unconnected people describe the same crooked grin. The imp-like reports cluster around ridgetop clearings, places where the tree canopy breaks and the ground feels oddly bare, as though something has been using that space for a long time. Then there's the goatmen accounts out of Scioto County, which carry a different weight entirely. Bipedal, hoofed, tall enough to clear a fence rail without slowing down. Farmers near Lucasville reported it in the 1940s, and someone filed a nearly identical description with a local historical society in 2019. 70 years apart, same hollow, same silhouette against the same ridge. That kind of consistency doesn't come from campfire stories passing between strangers who've never met. What it suggests is something far harder to dismiss. And these aren't even the reports that defy every category we have. Every field guide has a chapter that breaks the field guide, and Southern Ohio has more than its share of entries that refuse to fit any shelf. A farmer outside Waverly reported something in 1987 that stood on 4 legs, then 2, then seemed to fold itself flat against a fence post and vanish. No known animal does that, and no known cryptid category holds it either. A woman driving Route 32 near Piketon described a creature that was roughly the size of a deer, but moved in complete silence, with a face she said looked almost administrative, blank, deliberate, watching. What do you do with a report like that, one that carries the weight of genuine terror but lands in a taxonomy of exactly 1? These aren't misidentifications, because misidentifications cluster around known shapes, and these don't cluster around anything. They are singular, geographically pinned to the same river-cut hills that produced everything else in this guide. The landscape isn't just harboring creatures, it seems to be generating them. The sightings didn't stop when the 20th century ended, they accelerated. Witnesses filing reports in the last 2 decades describe every single category in this field guide, not as memory or legend, but as something they personally encountered on a county road or riverbank. Dogmen spotted near Scioto River bottoms in 2019, a winged shape over Pike County in 2021, a pale humanoid figure standing at the tree line off Route 35 just 3 years ago. The water creatures are still being reported from the same river bends the Shawnee named generations before Ohio was a state. Goblins, goatmen, shadow figures, reptilians, the full roster, active and current, filed by truck drivers and teachers and people who had no interest in being believed. What ties every single report together isn't the creature, it's the ground. The same ridges, the same river corridors, the same hollow roads that appear in accounts from 1840, appear in accounts from last Tuesday. Humanoid and ape-like beings, dogmen, reptilians, winged things, river monsters, goblins, goatmen, shadow figures, outlier creatures, and modern witnesses who can't explain what they saw. Southern Ohio has been producing all 10 for 2 centuries, and whatever is generating them isn't finished.